Missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is a huge issue in Canada to this day and often goes overlooked. Many people don't understand the weight of this issue, and we as a society have failed the Indigenous community. Indigenous women and girls 15 years old and older are 3.5 times more likely to experience violence than non-Indigenous women, and Indigenous women are 12 times more likely to be murdered or reported missing than their non-Indigenous counterparts, and Indigenous women are 12 times more likely to be murdered or reported missing than their non-Indigenous counterparts. Indigenous women are also 5 times more likely to die under violent circumstances compared to non-Indigenous women. The homicide rate is 7 times higher for Indigenous women. Missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is a human rights crisis which is now only being talked about more in the media. It is our job as Canadians to shed light on this issue and help those we can.
Highway of Tears. Highway of Tears refers to a 724-kilometer stretch of British Columbia's Yellowhead Highway 16, where many women and girls have disappeared or been reported murdered. The region is impoverished and until 2017 lacked appropriate public transportation, forcing many people to rely on hitchhiking. The precise number of women who have disappeared or been murdered is unknown. In their list of Highway of Tears incidents, the RCMP recognizes 18 murders and disappearances between 1969 and 2006. Indigenous women and girls make up 10 of the 18 victims. Many in the Indigenous community believe that this number exceeds 40. The resources available to support searches and awareness initiatives are limited due to socio-economical inequalities. Institutional racism and a lack of understanding of Indigenous issues obstruct proper investigations into these situations. Families of several of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls say the police assumed that many of the women were intoxicated, prostitutes, or had consented to sex prior to their disappearance or murder. As a result, authorities neglected these women and they were blamed for their own murders and disappearances.
Here are some of the victims of the Highway of Tears. First, we have Gloria Moody, 27 years old, a mother of 2. She was last seen leaving a bar in Williams Lake, British Columbia, and her body was found the next day, her murder unsolved. Next, we have Monica Ingus, 15 years old. She was last seen walking along Highway 16, Thornhill near Terrence, British Columbia in December 1974. Her body was found 4 months later, a few kilometers east from where she last disappeared. Her murder was unsolved. Roxanne Thierra, at the age of 15, disappeared November 1994 from Prince George, British Columbia. Her body was found near Burns Lake, British Columbia, Highway 16. Her murder was left unsolved. Delphine Nicol disappeared the 14th of June, 1990 at the age of 16. She was hitchhiking on Highway 16 between Smithers, British Columbia, and her home, Talcawa, British Columbia. Her murder remains unsolved.
Why does this happen? It is the socioeconomic conditions. Colonization and genocidal institutions leave them vulnerable. It's the disenfranchisement from wealth. The push to put Indigenous people on poor, isolated reserves also renders them vulnerable. Approximately 75% of residents in First Nation and Inuit communities say alcoholism is a problem in their communities. Systemic issues such as poverty, trauma, and lack of access to healthcare contribute to addiction. Data from the 2006 census, half of First Nation children lived in poverty. For some communities, like those in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, the rates rise to 62 and 64%. Access to jobs makes way for more of the population to enter into sex work, making them the most vulnerable.
In conclusion, Canada needs to prioritize the lives of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. The amount of Indigenous women and girls who have gone missing or have been killed is disproportionately high. Indigenous women and girls accounted for almost 10% of female homicides in Canada between 2000 and 2008, although Indigenous women made up just 3% of the female population. Resources must be given and time needs to be dedicated to supporting survivors and their loved ones, as well as ensuring thorough professional investigations that will result in justice for the victims and their loved ones. Everyone deserves the right to safety, and Indigenous women and girls have not received the safety and protection that they deserve and should be receiving. Thousands of disappearances and deaths have gone misreported or undetected throughout decades, even centuries in Canada, leaving the exact number of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals unknown. This violence that Indigenous women and girls face is an ongoing national tragedy, and it is time that the violence is put to an end.